Folks, remember a couple days ago we did a segment where I was really surprised about, uh, I think former or maybe current TYT host Jessica Burbank's performance on The Hills The Rising show. Um, well, that flummoxing is only going to continue, it appears. They put out a video yesterday uh, titled Proud Boy Enrique Tarrio Gets 22 Years in Prison for January 6th. He wasn't even in DC. And, well, it's bad. It's bad. I don't think she left since Ben did. So I think she just like sometimes hosts Rising. I don't know. I don't know what her employment situation is. But here we go. Let's go through this video.
Former Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison after being charged and convicted of seditious conspiracy for his role in the January 6th Capitol riots. Now, Tarrio, who served as national chairman for the far-right Proud Boys group, has received the longest sentence so far of any of the January 6 defendants. Judge Timothy Kelly said he would not grant the full 33-year sentence sought by federal prosecutors, but would grant a higher sentence than other extremist members in the hopes it would act as a deterrent. Tarrio, it should be noted, was not present in Washington, D.C. or the Capitol on January 6th. So this is something I talked about in my radar yesterday regarding the conviction of two of the other Proud Boys leaders who were in January 6th, who were there on January 6th and got significant sentences, 17 years. I can't remember what the other one was, but the very long sentences because they were perceived as having organized the event, and the prosecutors added a terrorism enhancement. That's why these sentences are so long. They're accusing them essentially of organizing a terrorist attack. And the judge, that Timothy Kelly, he basically said, it's not a full terrorist attack, but okay, I guess it's kind of a terrorist attack. So he gave prosecutors half the sentences that they were asking for. We were just talking in another segment about.
So I just want to say right off the bat, like, what Robbie Sove is doing here is essentially trying to be like, they gave him 22 years and he wasn't even in DC. How could they do this? This is a miscarriage of justice. He didn't do anything wrong. Except that in his trial, the prosecution was able to show that actually he was coordinating the events on January 6th from a hotel in Baltimore, and had convened what he called a Ministry of Self-Defense to coordinate the Proud Boys on January 6th. And he sent them encouragement, and he's the leader of the Proud Boys, their leader, urging them on to continue attacking the Capitol. No, like, it's the fact that they are trying to play defense for him here is wild. And honestly, I'm gonna say this: Rising thinks that the people who watch their show are morons. And I don't say this lightly. The reason I'm saying it specifically is because Robbie Sove, at the very least, so far in this video, is saying stuff essentially because he doesn't think anyone watching is going to bother looking up the actual details of the trial. That is essentially the thing. And if you look up the details, yes, he was behind a seditious conspiracy, definitionally. And the prosecution was able to show that. Like, this isn't a difficult idea. If you have a plan to overthrow the government and you act on that plan, and like it comes even remotely close to fruition, like, yeah, they're going to prosecute you.
You were talking about the need for sentencing reform to not have people in prison for so long. Look, I absolutely think these people who were there, I mean, Tarrio wasn't even there, but the other people did engage in trespassing and some other things, so I have no problem with them getting prison sentences, being charged. But this is so extreme, so harsh, so punitive, such long prison times for what was not it was not a terrorist plot. It was not a plot to overthrow the government or prevent Joe Biden from taking office, because it could have never succeeded. They interrupted a government meeting.
Okay. So his argument here is literally, oh, how could it be a plot to overthrow the government when it couldn't possibly have succeeded? Thousands of people stormed the Capitol, chanting that they wanted to hang the vice president. Thousands of people were searching for the Speaker of the House to murder her. But not only that, like, we know now from the charges that are being put up against Donald Trump that Donald Trump was trying to essentially seize control of Washington, D.C. We know from statements from the generals of our military that they were saying things like, quote, "We're not going to let the fascists take over." Like, if your rule of thumb here is essentially that, well, the military would have stepped in and stopped any real seizure of power, like, you've already lost the argument. Yeah, if you put enough, that's also a good argument. One hand wonder, like, if you put arsenic in somebody's drink and they just get sick instead of dying, like, you can still be charged with attempted murder.
Again, bad, charge them, but they were not actually engaged in like a coup to take over the government. That was never going to work. The government was just going to meet at a different time elsewhere to save
the almost 100 charges against the former president speak otherwise, Robbie.
The exchange of Biden's taking of office. So I feel like we're engaged in just totally like resistance, liberal, magical thinking about what happened on January 6th at this point. It was very bad. It was not ever actually going to stop what literally the literal riot on January 6th was not ever a planned, organized thing.
You can tell, by the way, that Robbie doesn't actually believe what he's saying and is bullshitting you because of how, like, shaky and lacking in confidence his voice is. You can hear it, how full of bullshit he is right now. And not only that, like, I've gone over the January 6th footage so many different times on stream. There is a moment in there where there's literally one police officer who distracts an entire mob of hundreds of people who have breached the Capitol from the hallway, the completely open hallway down which senators and members of the House are going down. Like, there was one guy at various points in between, like, these people getting their hands on folks like Mitt Romney and Nancy Pelosi. This is the fact that, like, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal. It's not like they killed anybody on purpose. Like, dude, even you know you're full of shit.
That was going to have anything to do with stopping Joe Biden's taking office, and these sentences.
Also, they literally stopped the counting of the votes. They literally stopped the process of tallying the votes. They did actually stop our democratic process. The first time that has ever happened in the history of our country. Yeah, no, and not only did they show up with zip ties, pipe bombs, etc., they also showed up with guns. There were people there with guns. It is actually insane and wild that it didn't devolve into a complete bloodbath. Dead Domain, thank you so much for the raid. Also, folks, go follow Dead Domain on Twitch and YouTube. They are a very, very wonderful non-binary content creator. So go show them some love, okay? Also, they have, you know, I know a lot of people in my audience. You're on the spectrum, just like me. They've got a lot of videos diving into things that are probably in your niche interests. Let's see. I also wonder if we have actually gotten our shit together faster, if they actually did hurt some senators or worse. Not that I want that. So, Mulebob, I wonder that too. But then I remember Steve Scalise. Do any of you guys remember Steve Scalise? He's a Republican senator who was shot. A guy came to like a softball game and shot him. And despite having been shot, he continued to be against like any type of regulation on firearms. Like the idea that if somebody did get hurt, they would be like, "Oh, well, now we need to do something." Nah, I don't think that would actually happen. You know, I think they would just be like, "Oh, it was just one bad actor got into the Capitol building, along with the thousands of other people who were trying to overthrow the election." But you know, the rest of them were just peaceful. Also, just as a reminder, like, the people who did this knew exactly what they were doing, okay? If you asked them on that day, they would fucking tell you. They would fucking tell you, bro.
Ma'am, what happened to you?
I got maced.
You got maced.
By the police.
And what happened? You were trying to go inside the
Yeah,
Capitol?
I made it like a foot inside and they pushed me out and they maced me.
What's your name? Where are you from?
My name is Elizabeth. I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee.
And why did you want to go in?
We're storming the Capitol. It's a revolution.
Like, they were just fucking telling you exactly what they wanted to do. It's not like it's a big mystery.
Sentences reflect something that is just fundamentally not true, and I'm pretty annoyed about it.
But it's the thought that counts, Robbie, right? They want
Yeah, that's basically what they
the election
said.
to be overturned.
Yeah.
I think it's a weird situation because you have Joe Biggs showing a ton of remorse, saying, like, I'm never going to do politics again. It seems to me that if we're upset at these people for doing this thing, what are we accomplishing by putting them in jail? That's a valid question. It seems that Joe Biggs, the Proud Boy who commented on it, has learned his lesson here and doesn't want to be involved in politics anymore.
Sorry, I was muted because I didn't want to like type into the mic. Wait, is this the TYT lady? Yes. Just as an FYI, if you believe what Jessica Burbank just said, you are a fool. Like, Joe Biggs seemed so contrite. He was, you know, he's so sad. He's never going to do politics again. And literally, Joe Biggs yesterday was filmed saying that Trump, essentially bragging that we didn't do anything wrong, and then bragging about how Trump is going to pardon him when he wins in 2024. Or like QAnon Shaman, who literally is now doing like political YouTube videos dressed as the Joker. It's really weird, and I hope he gets the help he needs. They didn't learn their lesson. You're just falling for their bullshit
anymore and sees that they got carried away. Were there people who entered that building with the intent, it seemed, to commit violent acts against AOC and Nancy Pelosi and Mike Pence? Yeah, it seems that a lot of them had violent intent. That's something that our justice system should absolutely interrogate. I think it's a weird thing balancing the fact that people died that day, that there were people who showed up who did want the election to be overturned. There were people who were there that I'm sure really wanted to hang Mike Pence or find
QAnon shaman got released early.
Nancy Pelosi or find AOC and do terrible things, potentially kill them, yes. Then I have, on the other hand, what an amateur job it was, how poorly researched their work was.
Oh, well, if the fascists are just incompetent, well, that makes it okay then? Man, like, it doesn't matter if they're incompetent if they're trying to overthrow the government. And they're doing it... They're doing it to the extent that they are literally shoving themselves into the Capitol building and chanting about how they want to murder the vice president. I just, like... The fact that it's incompetent doesn't really fix it or make it better. You can look at history, by the way. You can look at how the media covered Hitler in World War II, in the lead up to World War II. They made fun of him. You know, they mocked how he was incompetent. Because guess what? Fascists are incompetent. Their solution is like, oh, we want the trains to run on time, so we're just going to put a gun against your head, and if the train is late, we'll kill you. Like, that's not an actual solution to transit issues. If you think about that, that doesn't actually fix any of the systemic issues that might lead to things being late. But that doesn't matter when fascists get enough power, because then their illogical solutions are enforced on everyone, and hey. Yeah, exactly. Like, the beer hall push was not the most competent takeover of a country. Well, I would argue it's less wrestling with the news. It's less that they're incompetent until they suddenly aren't, and it's less and more so that they are incompetent until chance or circumstance affords them enough power where their incompetence no longer, really factors in. It doesn't matter how incompetent you are getting through like a wall if you by chance come across an unlocked and ready to go bulldozer. Imagine anyone on the left tried that. Yeah, no, exactly. The only reason this is downplayed is because January 6th was right-wing. I guarantee you, if those were left-wing protesters, they'd just be gunned down like dogs in the street. Okay? So I'm genuinely baffled by this.
Was how unsuccessful they were at the end of the day. Those two things are really difficult. And I think there has to be some other solution when I think about our system of justice of how do we resolve this from happening again? How do we, reform these people's way of thinking about our political system so that they don't believe the election was stolen, which we know definitely that it was not? How do we sit down with them and look through the evidence? Would that be more productive than putting
I'm gonna let her finish.
Them in prison for many, many years? Yeah. That's really what I think about when I think about this kind of a situation, is if we want to prevent things like this from happening, is putting a few people in jail or prison the way to do it. And I just don't think it is.
Not for 22 years.
They aren't just throwing random people in jail for 22 years. They're throwing the leader of the organization that is currently classified as a terrorist organization in other countries in prison. He was literally the head of the Proud Boys, and the Proud Boys in countries like Canada, and I believe a couple others, are listed as terrorist groups. And he coordinated the attack of the Proud Boys on January 6th. He just did it remotely because he knew that it could get his ass in prison if he was on the ground there. Like, this isn't hard to figure out. I'm sorry, like, if we're in the 1920s, and, you know, I'm 100% in favor of throwing the KKK Grand Wizard into prison. Yeah, I'm sorry, sure, it's valuable to find out how can you de-radicalize someone from a racist position. But also, if the racist you're talking about is literally the leader of a terrorist organization, yeah, you know what? I'm okay with throwing that person in prison. I have my criticisms of the prison industrial complex. I think there are maybe better ways we could handle criminal justice in this country. I think that prison abolition has a lot of really good ideas. But, like, when we're talking about terrorists or people who try to overthrow democracy and install a fascist dictator, yeah, I'm okay with putting those people in prison, especially their leadership. You know, literally, there are some people who were arrested and charged for January 6th who are now out of prison. You know, we mentioned QAnon Shaman earlier. He was arrested, charged, was in prison for a bit, now he's out. And that's fine. I think that's good, actually. I think it would be even better to charge the leadership. And the fact that they got Enrique Tarrio for 22 years honestly came as a big shock to me. Because my impression was that Enrique Tarrio had been, like, kind of flipping on the Proud Boys. But this charge really indicates that that's not the case. I thought he was flipping. That was the scuttlebutt, kind of in more colloquial spaces. And so I'm shocked that he got 22 years, but only because I thought he was already cooperating with the feds. It's fine that Shaman is out of prison, but he still needs help. Oh, yeah, 100%. He needs to be in a mental health care facility. Oh yeah, no, QAnon Shaman apologized in court. He cried in court, you know, he did the whole, like, I'm being so sincere. And then, like, immediately started making videos where he cosplays as the Joker. Forbidden Truth Academy, let's... Bros, if you ever find yourself on a website that looks like this, you need to take a good hard look at yourself in the mirror. Because this is the kind of website absolute donkey-brained individuals go to, okay? This is like some, if you focus your chakras, you can fly type shit. Oh, good. Forbidden Truth Academy seeks to improve the lives of its members and transform the world through education and mentorship, offering services to increase IQ, expand consciousness, and enhance personal evolution. Wow. This is crazy. Alright. Anyway, here...
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Here. We're not gonna watch the whole thing, but I told you, like, he does like the entire video in this weird cosplay. It's super weird. He really commits to the bit. Do I achieve sage mode when I declare that RFK Jr. is the Kennedy prophesizing Q? Yes. You unlock your true eye. All right. I forgot we were only halfway through this shit fest.
I absolutely support prison sentences. I'm not a prison abolitionist. I think there should be some punishment for they engage in trespassing. Biggs at least took down the barricade. Obviously, Tarrio wasn't even there, but maybe his communication.
And as we all know, people who aren't physically present for a crime can never have been complicit in it or aided in any way, especially not conspiracy charges.
Or something, they feel like he deserves some kind of, he's been at other events. Just charge them for what they actually did and give them a sentence commensurate with that. Some of these January 6 people have.
Damn, Robbie, you make some really good points. You should be a defense attorney for them, bro. Look, you got so much evidence on your side.
Been in prison like this whole time, right? So they have time served.
Oh no, the Hill has always been like this weird eldritch abomination start and park racing where it pretends to be this impartial news source, but in reality it leans very heavy conservative. Like they bring on they bring on like the entire point of Rising is that we have a leftist and we have a right guy, and then they talk it out for every news piece, and that on the surface seems like a good idea, but then when you actually get to the quality of the content that they put together, it's just frankly, the leftists that they bring on tend to be people who are going to nod along as a fascist conservative co-host makes their points, and it kind of becomes a microcosm of like what's the name for the effect? The possibility window is what my brain is trying to say, which is not at all what I want. Oh god. The Overton window. Thank you. It just in their microcosm, they just continually shift the Overton window to the right. Thank you. Yes. Sorry about that. Sometimes I just have really bad brain farts. I'm sorry. Must have been something I ate. Good night, Storma. Thank you for joining us. Also, Elenita Express, thank you for jumping on over to the riverboat.gg site.
That seems like a deterrent to me. Again, some reasonable sentence, but 22 years, that's the sentence you give for someone who murdered someone or murdered multiple people.
Or, almost overturned democracy and threatened to kill senators.
Someone who planned to actually blow up a building, maybe.
Aided and abetted an attempt to, install a fascist dictator and murder the vice president.
They had no actual plan. So I was there. I covered, as I've said numerous times on this show, I was covering the protest, which then turned into a riot. There is no doubt in my mind it is largely spontaneous because the crowd was riled up from having heard Trump. 95% or more of the people there were engaging in First Amendment protected activity. They were protesting. They had.
I'm sorry, your First Amendment right to protest does not extend to breaking into the Capitol building to try and overturn democracy.
Signs. They were angry. They had every right. You don't have to agree with the cause they're there for, but they have every right to engage in First Amendment protected activity on the steps of the Capitol, in front of the Capitol.
I would love to hear Robbie Sove repeat these talking points if communists stormed the Capitol complex of the United States of America. If communists showed up to peacefully protest while the votes are being counted, I guarantee you this slimy scumfuck of a fasci would essentially be like, gun him down. He would again, because fascists are not consistent with their ideological views. It's very simple. Robbie is okay with these people trying to overturn democracy and invading the Capitol complex. And he's not okay with anyone else doing that, because he is on the side of overturning democracy.
Smaller number of people then struggled with police, tore down barricades.
Yes, he's trying to say January 6th was not planned, and therefore there couldn't possibly be a conspiracy.
Smashed the windows, went in, defiled the place, prevented the meeting from happening. I'm fine charging all those people. Obviously, they got to be, convicted in a court of law. They get due process and the benefit of the doubt. But that's fine. But let's not chalk it up to...
Wait. If that's fine, then why are you doing a news story about this? If it's fine to convict them for overturning democracy and invading the Capitol complex and threatening the lives of senators and the vice president, then what are you doing this story about?
It wasn't 9/11, it wasn't Oklahoma City, it wasn't...
well, if they didn't blow up the actual Capitol building, then, well, we don't gotta overturn them. What are you talking about? You fascist fuck? What are you talking about? Oh, well, they didn't drive a literal car bomb into the Senate chambers.
Why should you go to jail for a crime someone else noticed?
Yeah. Look, it's... the guy only tried to murder me with a knife, okay? He only tried to do a murder with a knife. It's not like he showed up and tried to do a murder with an assault rifle or a grenade launcher. It's not like he showed up in a tank. Let's not pretend. What are you talking about, Robbie? This is dipshit brain. Okay.
It wasn't the Boston Marathon bombing. It wasn't even close to any of those things. It was a protest that got out of hand and became a riot. And we need sanity. Calling it terrorism or calling everything terrorism is gonna backfire, by the way, on leftist protesters or anti-police Black Lives Matter protesters type people. Imagine if you're charging all of them with terrorism and locking them up. I think many liberals and Democrats would be outraged about this, but I am not seeing outrage about these sentences from the mainstream media whatsoever. I had CNN on last night.
By the way, just as an FYI, the reason that they've added a terrorism enhancement to Tarrio's charges was literally because and I quote, his actions influenced the conduct of government by intimidation and coercion, which is all you need to have terrorism charges. If you break into the Capitol complex and are coordinating the actions of a politically minded group to do so, in order to specifically stop our democratic process, that would be definitionally why the terrorism enhancement was applied.
And they were talking about it. They were certainly not. They didn't seem shocked at the length of the sentences, or didn't have any concern that was a little wild. Again, for someone, the most recent sentence, Tarrio, not even there on the day of the riot.
Well, look, that guy's wife hired a hitman. She wasn't even there when the murder happened. She wasn't even there when she was in the Caribbean when that hitman killed her husband. How could she be at all held responsible? How could that be?
Yeah, I think it's already backfiring for a lot of folks on the left when we talk about what's going on in Stop Cop City. There's some smoke signals coming out of Atlanta and Fulton County that there's actually going to be RICO charges against a lot of the organizers around Stop Cop.
Okay, but that's a completely unrelated story.
To build a fucking gallows that takes planning. Someone has to look up the blueprint, buy the materials, ship it to locations, and manage a team of people to construct it. Totally spontaneous.
100% Catalina Gearbox. 100%. But again, the idea that, oh, well, if we charge people who tried to overthrow democracy, other politically motivated prosecutors might charge lefty protesters with crimes. Yeah, because, you know, they would just decide not to charge lefty protesters with crimes if we were really nice to conservatives. If we were just nicer to conservatives, lefty protesters would not get charged. What are you talking about? They would still get charged. That literally happens all the time. But also, RICO charges aren't terrorism charges. RICO charges aren't seditious conspiracy charges. Well, they charged this one group of people. Huh? I'm okay. Oh no, I'm good. I need to be quieter. I'm sorry. I got too loud. I'm getting too heated. But like, the idea that you simply just can't charge conservatives with crimes, because if you do, they'll charge lefties with crimes. It's ridiculous. The fact that Jessica Burbank is a political commentator, ostensibly on the left, and she's trying to make this argument, it is wild to me. Like, she's just uncritically accepting Robbie's framing of this situation.
City. So when we think about our right to protest and we think about what happened at January 6th, you know, you think about the crimes that were actually committed. You know, police officers lost their lives, or the police officer that lost his life was trampled by many of the folks that were in the crowd. So it's very difficult to say, you know, who's responsible for that death. When you think about the people going into the building saying, you know, we need to find Nancy Pelosi, we need to find AOC, we need to hang Mike Pence, it becomes very difficult to identify, you know, the people responsible for escalating this to the point of people committing crimes at January 6th.
It becomes really difficult to figure that out. I think that it might be easier if maybe you look at the leaders of different organizations like the fucking Proud Boys.
To the right, getting completely out of hand. Are the people who organized the protest responsible for the crimes committed by those people who attended it? That's a valuable question. What happened at Stop Cop City that's signaling they should have RICO charges against the organizers? I have absolutely no idea.
I have absolutely no idea why this connection is being made. This is a weird connection to make between two things that have nothing to do with one another.
Yeah. For them to say, you know, you're trespassing and you're camping out here and trying to prevent us from having this huge militarized police training center for good reason. I think people don't want their country to have a huge militarized police force. At what point are we losing our right to protest when organizers are getting RICO charges and these huge...
I think that there might be a difference between people in the woods protesting or people protesting on the construction site of an undesired thing in their community. I think there's a big difference between those types of protest and literally invading the Capitol complex to disrupt and overthrow our democratic process. I think that those two things are very, very fucking different.
Sentences. That's a valuable question to be asking. And is our justice system just not equipped to interrogate these crimes, to investigate them, to figure out what really happened at January 6th and who is responsible? That's, I think,
clearly not, because Enrique Tarrio got 22 years in prison because they were able to show in court that he coordinated activities from his hotel room in Baltimore. coordinated their law breaking and attempt to overthrow democracy from his hotel room. Like, this isn't difficult to figure out.
Another major concern surrounding this, but it does have implications. I think you're right, Robbie, on the right and on the left.
Well, we will continue following that, and we'll have more Rising right after this.
Rising is just consistently one of the worst things. Just consistently disappointing and infuriating. I didn't think we were going to spend like an hour on that, but here we are. These ideas have nothing to do with one another. You know, if you are just not enforcing laws against people trying to overthrow democracy, that only emboldens those forces that are trying to do so. That only empowers fascism in our country. And the fact that, like, oh well, you know, if we charge them for trying to overthrow democracy, then they're gonna charge us for protesting a compound. Like, these are not equivalent. If, like, honestly, even if you bought that at face value, that's a worthwhile trade-off. 100%. 100%. Even if you bought her argument at face value, preserving democracy in the face of fascism, and the cost is like a handful of protesters get charged with RICO on the flimsiest of grounds, yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll take that trade-off literally any day. We haven't talked about it yet, One Hand Wonder. We'll get there. Just liberals, man. The weakest types of lefties. OG Mountain Dragon, I didn't really pay a ton of attention to her until recently, but between this and her previous take that we covered, which I forget what topic that was, but I've been shocked by how bad it was.